Hey guys, it's me. It's 2 o'clock my time. I have been so excited to paint with you today. Hey everybody, I'm gonna wait just a few seconds so we can have as many people on as possible. And of course, this hopefully video is going to last for maybe an hour. I like to try to keep them at about an hour. For those of you that need to leave, this will archive later for you to view at your leisure. Let me check just one thing and I'll be right back. You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You did what? There was an ad. Okay, so I have a new employee in my studio. I hired my 12-year-old daughter to help me with this live stream. She is going to be reading out questions for me as I paint. And she has a little snack bowl and some water to keep herself occupied. But you know, my 12-year-old needed a job, and so she's here in my studio today with me. I'm so glad you are too. Blessings to all of you from all over the world. It has been so amazing to see your names pop up where you live. Of course, all of our hearts are as one and together in this really, really trying and just uncertain time. But I am so thankful for this community and for art that we can get through it. Art to me just takes so much anxiety out of my day. And so that's what we're gonna do today. We're just gonna have fun painting together, okay? So what I'm going to do is I wanted to thank Patreon member Susan Hodge for sending this beautiful, beautiful reference photo to me. So here it is. This is the reference photo we're going to be using. For those of you who want to see this larger, I will try to put it up here, but I might be standing in the way. So this is in the post that I just posted. Susan was very lovely to share this with all of us. This was taken outside of Charleston, South Carolina, which of course we're studying marshes this month. And I just thought that this one was a beautiful, calming scene for all of us to paint together. I am going to be working on a piece of pastel matte. This is the Buttercup color of pastel matte. The reason I chose it is when looking at this photograph, of course we see those beautiful golden grasses and the light itself is very warm. And so I thought, what better way to help support that warm light than to start with a very warm based paper. Now, normally, sometimes I like to use UArt. Of course, you all know me. I love UArt, and I would tone it. But I'm wanting to get away, especially right now, from using so much alcohol, rubbing alcohol, surgical spirits. And so I decided not to do that. I'm just using pre-toned paper. No wet underpainting today, okay? Now, for this, of course, this was taken at a really beautiful time of day. It looks like it was near sunset. The light is very warm. And I love that she chose to, have a lower horizon line and just this beautiful sweeping clouds that are going across, blues and yellows together. I mean, that's the best combination. So whenever we're looking at a value map of this, I love, especially when I'm working on a scene that's on my phone or on an iPad, to try to turn it into black and white. And all you have to do that is you have it in your, on your view, you click edit, and you can edit, well here, let me go back. Let me go back to the original. You go edit, and then you can scroll down and you can desaturate. You can do all kinds of stuff. Over here are some different color options. I just usually use the monochromatic. That's the most applicable desaturation. There's one called noir, but it's a little more bumped contrast. Anyway, all of that to say, that's how I do it. And I'm gonna have this right up here with me. I am gonna turn it back to the color version because I do want to try to symbolize. Oh, there it is. There you can see, there's my practice piece. So that's what I'm going to be kind of going off of. I love to practice my live streams before I do them, just so I can have the palette and paper and all of that set up. Okay, so here is the palette. I'm going to turn the camera down a little bit. So for those of you that are painting along, you can screenshot this really quickly. And if you want to paint along, you can pull these colors out. And I will try to explain them as much as possible. So I have them kind of separated right now. This area is more for my trees. This area is more going to be for the marsh grasses. And this area, this bigger area, is for my sky. Okay, so everybody got that? Okay, I'm gonna have to move the camera a little bit so you can see it. So sorry for the camera angles. I want you guys to be able to see it very closely. Oh, my daughter. You have a question, Mom?
Do you choose your entire palette before you start painting?
I did this time for the live streams. I don't normally for the videos that I do for you or for whenever I am painting on my own. I don't have a large palette to begin with, and so I pretty much, use kind of similar colors. That's something that we as pastelists have to our advantage. Our style can be our palette. But for this and for just efficiency, I wanted, let me see if I can get the camera to be still. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, we're gonna get this. Let's see, it's kind of sliding around. Wants to pull down. Here, just a second. I have to move I have it on this clamp and the clamp is kind of loose. There we go. Well, technical difficulties, everybody. Okay, well, shoot. How's that? Is that okay? Thank you guys for sticking with me. I'm sorry. I'm not a professional live streamer. Can you see me if I'm working right here? Just like that. I think that'll work. Anybody give me a thumbs up? Okay. So, the first thing that I'm always going to do is using my mechanical pencil, I'm going to make my horizon line. Of course, you guys have seen me do this a million times. And I want to follow, you can see that this horizon line, if we were to divide this photo into thirds, that horizon line is about at that lower third. And so I'm going to just gently make a mark to indicate. Now, I'm not really trying to make sure that it's exactly straight. I just want to start placing my elements in the space in in an appropriate way. Now, the thing is that I want to do to paint this scene is I'm kind of zoom in. The photograph itself is a little bit longer. And so I'm going to be squeezing some elements together. I'm going to be changing some heights to add drama. And so for these trees, especially over here, I'm going to make them a little taller than they appear in this photo. So I'm going to just start kind of sketching in. Here, I'm going to move this over a little bit. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of look at the reference to just kind of get the outline shape, holding my pencil really loosely. I want to, indicate this. I could, but then I think it would be out of the camera frame. If I put it over here, it won't be seen. Let me try. Thank you for your suggestions, everybody. Let's see. Maybe like that. It will still, Huh. Sorry, everybody. I don't know what is up with my clamp. It's getting loose. Oh, there we go. It's better on the right. Is that better right there? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna move it back. I think I got my camera angle straightened out right there. How's that? Okay. Okay, back to painting. I'm going to I raise the height of the right trees, and I'm going to lower the trees off in the distance because I really want to play with my distance going and really push it back. And using different heights adds a little bit of drama to our scene. I'm also just going to loosely sketch, where the path of water is, just to kind of show maybe where the edges of the grass will be. I'm also going to loosely sketch in kind of the angles of the clouds here. This just helps me place the objects in space. Now, pastel matte is so different. I don't know if very many of you are familiar with pastel matte. It doesn't blend very well at all. That pastel is going to just stick to it. But that really helps whenever you are wanting to have a loose painterly style, because your marks are going to be much heavier looking, because you can't really blend them out. Now, the first thing that I am going to put down, normally sometimes, especially if there's a really dominant sky, I like to work from top to bottom. I'm going to be kind of working all over this one for today, but I'm going to just apply my dark distant tree line. This is a blue new pastel. I'm just scumbling really loosely in. Now so whenever I was sketching that in, I was having camera problems. And so one thing, one thing that I have to do in these live videos is I'm so close to the camera or close to the easel than I am normally, that I need to, really be able to step back, because I don't want to center where the trees are combining. These foreground trees and those distant trees, I don't want them to meet in the middle. And so I might be playing with the angles a little bit. But once again, this pencil sketch is just kind of an idea. Now, in the reference photo, the right-hand trees are much more in light. Of course, the light is coming across this way. You can tell by the way the edges of the clouds are lit, the edges of the trees are lit. Even some trees off in the distance are getting those last rays. And so there isn't as much blue in these trees, especially at the top where they're getting a lot of that light, but there is some darkness at the base of those trees. So I'm gonna just kind of extend those blues over. And once again, I'm really, you can't blend. I mean, look, I'm pushing and pulling, and it's really hard to move that pastel around. And so a lot of it is just going to be through layering other pastels. Now I'm going to be choosing a Terry Ludwig. This is a dark, cool green. Now these, especially the softer pastels, they lay down quite a bit easier on this pastel matte. You can tell, I'm using a very light touch, and it's, with that new pastel, I kind of had to push hard. With this Terry Ludwig, not having to push quite as hard. Now I'm working dark to light. That is something that's really important to remember about, whenever I'm painting, scoot this over a little bit, whenever I'm painting any kind of trees, even though these trees are going to be really light, there's still darkness in them because there's the interior of the tree. The tree is 3D, it has form, so it can't just be bright. We have to build on that darker, deeper base, that lightness, we have to help it come forward. And so I'm looking at the reference photo where those shadows are and just kind of scumbling on loosely. You can tell that I'm using a softer touch over here than like down here at the base where the shadow is deeper and more apparent. Okay, so that's pretty much all I would do for now. I'm really just wanting to very loosely scumble in some mass values right now. Since I'm not doing any kind of wet underpainting, I want to do the same thing, get my value map in, but this time I'm just getting my value map in with dry pastel. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work a little bit on the deeper areas, the deeper values of the grasses, especially at the bottom of the painting. There's some really nice kind of shadowed areas. And this is also a new pastel. This is kind of an ochre color. I want to build those golden colors, but I want to do it on a base of orange just because it makes it really nice and warm. You can use new pastels. They're wonderful for grasses. I'm not trying to do any detail right now. I am kind of going up and down instead of side to side, especially here in the front. Off in the distance, I might go side to side a little bit more. You can also, make little grassy textures. I don't necessarily do that in this beginning stage because I'm still going to be covering it quite a bit with more golden pastels as we keep going. This is just so it has kind of a nice darker base to where all of these pastels are going to live. Okay, now this is a towel. Sometimes I use a towel instead of pipe foam because it helps me kind of push some stuff in. And towels, even pipe foam can flake off a little bit. Towels don't. And so I like to kind of take, especially on pastel mat, you can take a towel gently and just kind of dab it around, and it helps you blend, saves your fingertips. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, really I'm just kind of moving around. I'm gonna put some more golden grasses. This is a Richardson. It's a very, you can tell that it's almost the same color as the paper. I like that. The paper is really supporting the pastel right now, and I'm wanting to just kind of get a nice base. The more pastel that you have on pastel mat, the easier it becomes to blend. And so I don't want to overwork it or put too much on so it becomes muddy, but I do want to put a little bit more on in this beginning stage so I can maybe blend a little bit, even if it's blending with another pastel. Really just very, very light flicking motions. So now we have kind of this muddy, not very exciting piece yet. That's because I'm really working on just establishing the darks. Now I want to establish some darks in the clouds, and I'm using another Terry Ludwig. This is just a really natural gray. There are darks. Here, I'm going to move the camera really quickly. I think I figured out how to make it less shaky. You can see all of these darks on this edge, on the opposite edge of where the sun is. And so that's where I'm going to be putting this gray, is I'm just going to kind of be looking at the reference, using a really light touch. Since this is a Terry Ludwig, I am barely touching the paper. I don't want to push too much. I just want that little bit of darkness so then I can add the light going forward. And that's really, my philosophy of painting anything is I start with the darker, and then I'm adding the light in later. I'm going to kind of pull some of that cloud back behind that tree. Really just flicking. I like to do clouds pretty soft. No big chunky marks here right now. Of course, when we start adding in the blues of the sky and the light and the clouds, it will really all come together. Remember, if you are a beginner or even if you're an advanced pastelist, there is always a stage in your piece where it looks not so good. There's kind of an ugly stage to most paintings. And, you know, a lot of the confidence as a painter comes with knowing that and, you know, giving yourself permission to keep going. Don't give up too soon. So many artists, you know, so many, especially beginning pastelists, they give up too soon when you could, you know, you can save your piece. We are problem solvers. But you can see how I've kind of painted the edges of where the shadows are. So on the you know, the areas of the brighter clouds, I haven't put anything there. This is where a brighter area of the cloud is going to be. So I'm not going to underpaint the entire cloud with this color. I'm going to save it and start blending in lighter values as we go towards the, you know, the brighter value of the cloud. Okay. Let me step back and look really quick. Okay. I'm not going to probably do the water until a little bit later because I really want the same colors to kind of be present. So this area right here is going to kind of stay that way for a while. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the sky for a little bit for those of you painting along. This is a gray new pastel that is slightly lighter value. And on the edges of these darker areas, I'm going to start pulling and kind of blending into those areas where I mentioned I'm going to have the brighter color. This is how I kind of I'm going to bridge those values together. New pastels, I love them. You know, you guys, if you've been with me for very long, you know that I really prefer the harder pastels because you can either push very hard and make, you know, a very opaque mark, or you can just gently rub. When I'm rubbing about as hard as I was with that Terry Ludwig. And instead you can glaze the color on. So you have a lot of, you know, I don't know, to me, they're a little easier to work with. I don't worry so much about filling my tooth when I'm working with these harder pastels. So you can see how I'm kind of bridging that area, that darker pastel into the lighter pastel. Is anybody okay? Okay, I hope, is everybody, why don't you here, I'm gonna pause for a second. Are you guys having issues with the feed? Here, let me go back. Let's see. Okay, if for some reason, log out, if you're having issues with the feed, for those of you that maybe are on and helping people that are, tell them to click out, X out of YouTube, go back to Patreon and re-click on the link and it will take you back to a fresh one. I don't know, sometimes, who knows, it's Wi-Fi or data issues where you are, but I'm gonna keep painting. Okay, so the next thing, really I could work on any area. I could keep working on the warmth of the clouds. One thing I think I am going to add, there's this really beautiful peachy color. It's just one, it's like a step lighter than this yellow. And I am going to add it a little bit into these areas where there's going to be warmth. Now this is not the lightest color that I'm going to use.
Do you have a teenager in the house?
I do. I have a teenager in the house. And sometimes whenever you're, you know, I'm working on clouds, you can, you know, the shape of the cloud can be very broad, but then you can, you know, bring it in. Usually a shape is bigger and then you can kind of cut in with sky colors. So right now I'm being very loose, you know, looking at the reference photo. I'm not really trying to copy every single bit of that cloud. I'm just trying to get the idea of that cloud. Once we start putting in blues, it really helps be able to see it. Once again, with my little towel. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start putting in the blue sky because I think that will help. It's really hard for you to see because I'm looking back at my message, or at my computer, or at the screen, and I can see that this right here looks exactly the same color. It's not quite, but it is pretty close. But once we start adding in some sky color, it's going to really start opening up. Right now, we don't really have any light values in this piece. And so we need those light values for the other values to make sense. I'm starting off with a Townsend Tirage. This is a very light turquoise Townsend. I love to have turquoises at a horizon line. They really help. Usually horizons, especially the light, is a little bluer, or I'm sorry, it's greener than the light that's going to be at the top of the sky. So I always usually start with a really brighter turquoise. Then I'm just going to slowly work my way up, kind of cutting in, and this is where I'm going to start adjusting the shape of the clouds. You can see that, I can go in and using different marks and different pressure, I can change that shape of the cloud based on, to look at the reference photo a little bit more. This is a little bit darker value of turquoise. I, really try to make it straight across. So looking at the same quality of light across the sky. And then I'm going to start getting more into cobalts and ultramarines as I go up. Adding a little bit of different color temperatures to your skies will really help it have a kind of beautiful vibrancy to it. Can kind of pull some of that blue even into those darker shadows. And see, so I have a little bit more pastel on my paper, so I'm able to pull and push it around a little bit to help with some blending. You think I should get a new one of these? This is from the Terry Ludwig Best of the Blues. I've talked about that set all the time. It is a really good one for those that love to paint water and sky. Now I'm moving into even darker turquoise. Really kind of just looking at the reference here. Also my beacon blue that I love so much. I can put it in. You can see how I'm making little small kind of X marks. X marks the spot.
What brand was the first turquoise pastel you used?
The first turquoise, this one was a Townsend Tirage. Then I used, I think I used, this is a Unison, and it's actually a light green, but light green and very light turquoise are basically the same. And then another Unison right here. This Beacon Blue is a Great American, and it's one of my very favorite colors for skies. It's a unique color. I'm gonna peel this little bit of tape up right here. Okay, so there are definitely areas where I need to kind of blend the lighter value into the darker value. And I love to do that using other blues that are similar values, but different color temperatures. That's where we get a lot of excitement in the sky. When we use light scumbling marks, this is an ultramarine against this beacon blue. I'm not sure that you can tell, but here in my studio, the colors really pop. I'm not trying to cover up all of that golden. I really love that quality, and so I'm trying to kind of keep those, let's see. keep that present. Right now I'm trying to find a color, a palette. I had to go back to my palette box that was kind of in between this light and this dark. So I can blend those together to where they make a little bit more sense. So you can see this area that I painted golden is starting to read more as a cloud instead of just some big blob in the sky.
What size is your paper?
The size of my paper is a 9 by 12. I'm also bringing some of this cobalt and ultramarine down into this turquoise a little bit. It's a similar value, and I just want to make sure that, you know, those glows, all of that makes a little sense. I'm just adding little touches of sky. This area I'm going to kind of reserve. I might put some golden clouds there, so I'm not going to bring the sky over right there just yet. I'm just kind of working on the sky around. Okay, also going to, so there's beacon blue up there, so I'm just gonna pull some of that down right here just to remind myself of where it is. Also gonna put a little bit of that cloud color down here. Not gonna work on the whole of the water just yet. Okay. So the next thing I think I want to do, I'm going to work a little bit on the trees. Right now I'm just going to kind of let this, I'm going to think about this. This is often how I work. I will work on an area until, you know, I'm pretty satisfied right now with the values anyway of the sky, at least from, you know, up the upper reaches of the atmosphere down. Does that mean all of the shapes are going to stay exactly the same? No, but I'm going to go to something else while I think about this, and I can step away from my easel, look at it, problem solve. If I want to add another shape, I can do that. I don't want to get too finalized with this area yet until more of the areas start to come to be in the same, you know, this is more finished than any of this. So I need to bring the full painting to the same level before I add in all those final warm touches. So for the next parts, I'm just going to work on warming up, lightening up some of these, some of the tree areas. Now I'm going to choose, this is also a Terry Ludwig. I've used it a lot, and you can tell that I kind of roll my pastels because it's gotten round. But this is a little bit warmer than what I had already put down. And so I'm just wanting to add a touch of, starting to add those touches of light that I mentioned. Using a pretty firm scumble. I don't want to cover up these dark areas of the trees, but I could make a few tiny little marks that will help me imply that there are branches and there are different types of trees within this line of trees, and these off in the distance are going to be darker. Really just kind of trying to fill that mass shape in. Then I can work even lighter and start developing more individual trees within. Also going to, let's see, I'm going to work a little bit and darken this down, get that shape a little bit better. Now in the reference photo, there are some very bright spots where they're getting, you know, the sun is streaming across, getting a few of those tops of those trees. So I'm going to put a few of those in too, just to indicate that light a little bit. Okay, Augustin, Terry Ludwig are harder than Schminkies. Schminkies are probably one of the softest pastels. They're probably rated one of the softest, if not the softest. So these are a little harder than Schminky. I don't use Schminky that much, but they are beautiful pastels. And I think you just got a big new set of it. I think you shared that in our Facebook page. So here, I've kind of established some of the trees. Now I can go lighter still. I like to work, like I mentioned, dark to light. And I've often talked about I love to work cool to warm. So this is even brighter. So the colors I've used kind of in a row are right here, especially in the warmth. And they're here. Let me try to see if I can hold them up for you guys. I don't know if you can tell. You can see this one is the one I used first, and then this one, and then this one. And so I'm working slowly up in value to help me form. And so my trees have weight to them. I don't want to add those, those vibrant colors or that very bright value until I have a little bit darker value underneath it. That helps me imply that, okay, well, maybe this tiny little branch that's reaching out towards the sun a little bit more. It makes that part of the tree come forward a little bit, especially since it's so warm. Warm colors come forward, cool colors recede. Okay, another thing I'm going to start doing is I am going to bring some of this darkness down into the water. There is a little bank of grasses that are kind of extending out here. And also maybe the grasses that are growing out into the lake or into this marsh. So I'm just going to pull some of that. This is also a Terry Ludwig, really soft, but it's kind of the proper value. Kind of like that. Let's see. Can also pull down some lighter greens since there is lightness, lighter areas of those trees. One thing I'm going to change, I'm going to take my brush right here and I'm going to brush off. Because I'm going to change. I just feel like it's kind of like there's a mound here and then a mound here and then a mound here and then a mound here. I want to change up the shape of it a little bit, so I'm going to just try to get some of that tooth back. Of course, with pastel matte, just kind of want to change up the shape of the trees a little bit. And that's so easy to do. Also, I can change it up with my sky. So that's another way you can change it. I could say, okay, no, I want to make that horizon line go in a little bit, go in farther to that tree. So I'm just gonna make some hard marks and redefine a shape. If you mess up like I just did, you can brush it off. Can always adjust. Pastels are so forgiving. We can really do some fun things with them. I don't want to bring this same color up here because it would be too light. So here, I'll do it anyway, just for you guys. But that's a little too bright. You can see the difference. And so I want to go a little bit darker as I go up, especially if I'm trying to adjust a shape. Also make sure your pastels are clean. My hands are dirty and I don't want to get any dark green in my sky. Okay, and I'm not really going to be putting very many sky holes in, just because I don't want to break up the shape too much. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in my more of the body of the cloud. I think I'm going to put in a little bit of maybe some purple as another area to kind of help bridge the shadows inwards. Now this is a Giraud, beautiful French pastel. They're probably one of my very favorites. This is a Giraud that's been broken in half, so they're about twice this long. They're a wonderful, unique pastel for, you know, texture-wise. They're kind of hard and soft. They're a wonderful kind of medium grit pastel. A lot of plein air painters use them often because they're so small. You can fit a ton of them into your plein air palette box. I'm just looking at the clouds here. Here, I'm going to move the camera real quick. You know, I'm looking at the clouds, and you can see in like this area, you know, the clouds are there, but it's closer value to the sky color than these brighter areas. And so I'm just kind of working on reshaping what I have up here right now, adding a little bit of vibrancy with that purple into the sky. Now I'm going to take that gray new pastel that I worked on, not the dark gray one, the other gray, the new pastel gray. You can use new pastel to really kind of blend pastels together. They're so versatile. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in some lighter colors. This is also a Townsend. It's a tiny, tiny Townsend. It is this color, 78M. I had broken it off out of its wrapper, and so I was using half of it. I love this color. I love Townsend's. It's fantastic for so many different things. This is not the brightest color that I'm going to be using in the clouds, but it is a really beautiful tone. Very warm. It's a very warm, I actually think it's a very light, oh, I forget now. I was gonna say something and then I second guessed myself. I don't want to give you guys wrong information, but look it up. It's a great color. You can kind of even hear, they have a lot of pumice in them. You can kind of even hear how scratchy it is. Using, once again, a really, really light touch. Whenever I use my fingers, I'm not rubbing and blending together. I'm more pushing and pulling the pastel gently to just soften it into what it, you know, its neighbor. How's everybody doing? You can tell that I'm really starting to concentrate because I quit talking. Okay, now I'm going to lighten up even more. I'll also probably keep working on the blue, cut some more blue in.
If you did not have pastel matte paper, would you recommend toning the UArt?
Yes, if you do not have pastel matte, you could absolutely tone your paper with some golden. You could use thinned acrylic paint, or you could use your gold, your yellow gold pastels to tone it with any kind of wash. I would avoid water. You could use rubbing alcohol, surgical spirits. You could also use odorless mineral spirits, with which that is something that we'll be working on. So sneak peek for those of you who are Here, we'll have a little distraction for a second. Here's the piece that we're going to be working on for Monday. This is the painting for Monday, right there. And for this one, I used odorless mineral spirits. So you could use that. This is on UArt, and I toned it with some pink. So this is the painting for Monday. But yes, you could use UArt. Okay. I'm still not quite finished with the shapes of especially the clouds as they're coming into this, or the shape of the blue sky as it's coming into the cloud. But I feel like I want to start kind of working a little bit down here. Now, you know, I'm slowly starting to finalize areas of the painting. Okay. Now I'm gonna try, now in this reference image, there is a distant area of the water, especially, that's very, very light, right in here in this section. And so and it's also very thin. So that's something, you know, as a landscape painter, you really have to pay attention to the shapes of things. And it is, you know, the true case is that as things go off and recede, they flatten out and get thinner. Clouds do that, water does that, reflections do that. And so I don't want to make broad, chunky marks way back there. I want to add very linear marks. So of course I chose like a kind of pointed, tiny pastel, because that's going to help me indicate that water. Now I want to make sure, which, you know, after this, I would probably take out a ruler to make sure that my water isn't curved. Water doesn't curve up. It's flat. It always finds level no matter what. So make sure that when you're painting water, if, you know, even if something is, if the shoreline itself is curved, sometimes that can be an optical illusion, but in our image, it's very straight. And so I want to make sure it's straight. It's kind of hard to do it on live video, but, and also in the reference photo, you'll notice how the water gets darker towards the left-hand side. It's almost like the light is being concentrated kind of right here, which is about a third of the way in, you know, from the edge of the piece. And so I don't want to bring that really light color all the way out, because light against dark is always going to draw the eye. My darkest darks are probably right here and here. I don't want to put my light, I don't want to put light next to that because it would be too contrasted. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to kind of start working a little bit on the water here.
Can't see where the distant trees are supposed to start.
Yes, that area I'll probably fix in a second. It looks kind of like it's solid. They're gonna probably disappear about behind there. Also, I think I'm going to add some yellow. I'm going to add some brighter, more vibrant yellows. Now this is when I would start to get, you can tell, I'm getting a little more free with my mark making. It's still very close to the color of the paper. So I can add in just a few really vibrant yellows. I don't want to fill it up with vibrant yellows, but I do want to indicate more grasses. also add a hint of some light off in the distance. Okay, so I'm going to put some of this purple down here in the water. I added it up into the sky. I want to put it down into the water. Also going to kind of work a little bit on some of this reflection. Bringing that reflection straight down, you know, I just did this with grasses, but I want that water to look like it's behind the grasses. So I'm gonna pull some of that down in, and then I'll layer some grasses again over it. Also gonna put some of this, you know, I don't want to lose any of my cloud, kind of my reflections. Now there aren't a lot of reflections in this reference photo, especially of the clouds necessarily, but I do want a little bit of that color to shine through. And so I'm gonna start putting some of that in. That's the beacon blue. You can see that I can also even bring it a little bit down into some of those grasses. If I get a little too much, I can just pull. So here is where I'm using those different color temperatures. I've used a dark blue, I've used a turquoise blue, I'm using very analogous colors in my water. And it really helps form that really pretty glow that makes that water just sparkle. You can also gently pull some of that blue across that green, and those very gentle blue lines really help with that feeling of reflection. Thank you guys for sticking in with me for so long. I'm sorry there were some technical difficulties in the beginning. Never know with computers and my clamp, at the beginning whenever I couldn't get it to be still. One thing I really want to make sure is that my line right here where my tree is, that it's the same line as it goes off in the distance. It's not over here, it's not over here, it's really straight. I love to make a really hard edge, usually at those spots, just because it's kind of something that is pretty, it draws the eye anyway, because it's an area that is, you know, it's different. And so adding that hard mark highlights it even more. Bringing some of those fun blues down into your grasses, using flicking marks helps me create the sense of those that grass growing up without having to actually draw it in. Okay, so I like that. I'm going to brighten up some spots. Especially since I want to differentiate that distant tree. The distant tree line, I mean. Sorry, didn't finish my thought. There is some brightness though, way back there. Another thing that I like to do, especially if I have really warm light, yellow light, and yellow grasses, I don't want to only put greens in my tree. I want to put yellow in my tree too. And so using a similar value yellow will help all of those things just become a little bit more cohesive. So don't only use greens in your trees when you are painting, especially something like this where there's a lot of light bouncing around. Put that yellow in your trees too. We've all seen that beautiful last light of day and how everything just takes on this golden cast. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of step back and look, see what I need. So of course this all right here seems kind of unfinished. So I'm gonna work on that for a second. I also feel like I need some shadows to be a little bit darker in here. And maybe even on this shoreline a little bit, just to give it a little bit more weight. You can also use a pencil. I love to use my graphite pencil. I can even kind of define that a little bit if I wanted to. Go up in here. Still just playing with it. Let's see. That's too dark right there. This is that glazing brush that I often use.
Should the distant tree line be lighter and cooler than the near tree line?
Not in this case because it's in shadow. It's in deep, deep shadow. The sun is so, I mean, it could if I really wanted to push it back, but I like that difference in value contrast in this one because it indicates, you know, that that it's not receiving the same quality of light. I could add a little bit of blue to it. Now I kind of messed up my shoreline. Let me just straighten that out. It just depends. I mean, you know, rules are made to be broken. That is a rule that is generally true, especially if you're wanting to really indicate more distance. And that's just a personal choice. And in this case, I'm just not trying to indicate as much distance. If I really wanted to imply that those were very far back, then yes, you know, that would be something I could definitely do. Kind of lost a little bit of what I liked down there. Just goes to show you, don't mess too much with your paintings. And I also want to indicate, you know, there's a little bit of blue that's going to shine maybe right in there where this tree dips down. And so I'm really trying to follow the pattern and shape of the trees, because I like to add those blues around. It just brings a lot of, for one thing, they're just pretty. Also like to make those kind of chunkier marks in water. It's something that I'm always working on. Okay, enough with the water. I'm gonna work on the sky for a second. How long? Let's see, how long have we been going? Okay, we've been going for an hour. So this is that same color that I just used down in the sky, and I'm gonna, or down into the water. I'm gonna use it a little bit to start to maybe change some shapes in the clouds. I have to be sure though, whenever I'm doing this, that if I'm adding a color over here, especially value-wise, I want to add it in this, you know, on the other side of the sky too, just for consistency. Can see that that is starting to kind of help that far left side make a little bit more sense. I'm going to move to a little bit lighter turquoise since I'm getting closer to the horizon. I'm going to start to make some shapes. You know, this isn't exactly shaped just like the reference photo. It's a little different, but that's okay. I am going to add a little bit of bright to those distant trees to show that light coming across. Okay, let's see. Work on this lower cloud. This is that new pastel. Fill that kind of that area in. Also going to bring, so, you know, I mentioned how things get thinner as they go farther off. Of course, in the reference photo, this has a few more shapes, and I could continue to kind of cut in. I might, but I can also, with this same gray new pastel, add a little bit of just linear lines that indicate distant clouds, and some of these little guys over here. Pulling some of that in and behind that cloud. I don't want a halo, and so when I've done that, now I'm going to go back in and fix that little edge of my tree. So my tree looks like it's not behind the cloud. Okay, how are we all hanging in there? Everybody doing okay? How many of you are painting along, and how many of you are just watching? I would love for you to chime in and let me know. A little bit of, you know, I left a lot of the paper color showing. So right now I'm just kind of working on lessening that look just a little bit. So I took, you know, that gray new pastel, and kind of covering those areas just so it's not too dominant. Because I want the clouds to be soft. I'm using a really light, I'm using this more than anything to blend and add just a glazing of color. And then I can always go back in with my warm colors and redefine those edges with some harder marks. If I get a little too hard, I just tap with my towel, or I could use my pipe foam. Really just kind of looking at where the light is. Does it make sense? Is the light making sense? Is it following the pathway that I want it to? Even on those little tiny gray clouds, their left edges are still kind of being lit. Okay. I think I'm almost finished, except for a few things that I want to do in the trees. But of course, I'll probably, this will hang on my studio easel the rest of the day, and I'm sure I'll come over to it and mess with it. I will definitely be sharing an updated photograph of it, and any kind of changes that I make, I'll definitely let you guys know. I'm gonna pull some of that cloud color over. I'll definitely post it and let you guys know. Okay, so one thing that I want to add, I think I'm gonna add just some yellow light over here to those distant trees. This is also a Townsend. Now in the reference photo, there's lots of little grasses that are in the water. That is too complicated. I don't want to do that. And so I'm not going to paint that. I want to simplify a reference always to really what draws me to this image. And it's the beautiful clouds and the beautiful reflections. And so I don't, the grasses down here in the water, they don't really tell a story that I care to tell. And so that's the part that I am going to remove. I do kind of like this little spit of reflection right there. Okay, one thing that I love to add in any kind of, let's see if I can find them. Oh yeah, my pencil. Our trunks on my trees. And so I'm going to be using these two. These are Carb Othello. Colors 692 and 642. I have no idea what actual colors they are. But you can see in the reference photo, if you have it pulled up, that there are tree trunks that are all in this area especially. And I like to add those by holding my pencil at the end, starting and then pushing and flicking my pastel pencil upwards. I put it down, I flick, and I push. I also don't draw it like this, and I don't necessarily do it from top to bottom in one swift mark, because there's probably there's branches on this side of that trunk. And so I want to indicate that we're seeing some of it, and some of it we're not seeing because it's behind those branches. Now in some areas I like to use this more mauve tone because it looks more shadowed. And so those tend to kind of disappear off into the shadows a little bit more. If you really want to highlight one that's especially vibrant, you can do that. And then you can also add some leaves over the trees to help break it up a little bit. To just indicate, you know, to help you a little bit more with the shape of the trunk anyway. This is a Rembrandt. I love Rembrandts for grasses because they're just such a linear pastel. You can see that I'm just really kind of rubbing it up and down. I'm not drawing. Some of it, you know, I did this earlier, but that makes a little thicker mark. I really want just really soft grasses, just kind of tapping it. You can also, on distant grasses, push and flick up and lift off. And that really helps with that sense of special, you know, that sense of light hitting grasses, especially on areas where you have a really light value against a really dark value. Now off in the distance, way off here, you know, there are grasses off there too, but they are not being hit as much by the light. And so I'm just gonna put this very neutral brown to kind of indicate more of a shoreline. But also, I'm leaving that all of those areas really loose. I don't want, I really don't want the eye to go back there. I really want the eye, to sit right here. If I was highlighting it even more, I could highlight, a really vibrant green against that dark, which makes the eye travel there, travel here to this blue. It really kind of keeps you moving. That's a little, maybe too vibrant right there. And that's about it, everybody. I think we're about done. Of course, I'll look at it and I'll change something about it, I'm sure. So here, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna bring over the one I did yesterday. And of course, whenever I am painting on my own, doing something on my own, in my own studio with my own thoughts, no camera, no, I'm not really thinking about communicating what I'm doing. Things are totally different. And so this one is a little different than this one. You can see even differences in especially the cloud temperature, the cloud shape. I am notorious, it's really hard to exactly recreate a painting, but I still have the same, it's the same feel. Some of the fun touches in this one that I love are the harder, chunkier kind of vibrancy that is in the clouds. And those are something that I kind of painted throughout the day. Yesterday I would, go off and do some laundry or go for a walk with my kids. We're still able to take walks, which has been so nice. I'd come home and I would, think, okay, I'm gonna change the shape a little bit. Let me just make a really hard, chunky mark. I'm always trying to work on my mark making. It's something that's really important to me, to not have everything be one type of mark. It's the same thing as using different brushes. If you're an oil painter or acrylic painter or watercolorist, we don't have, all the different brushes. We have different hardnesses of pastels, and we have different, pressure that we apply to the pastel to make harder or softer marks. And we also have, different shapes. That's why a lot of people love the Terry Ludwigs, because they're a square shape. Great Americans are also square. And so they can create different brush strokes than normal. But also just applying, different pressure. I love to make those square, chunky marks. And so I practice that by looking at an area that I feel like needs maybe a little bit of vibrance, and I will just make a mark. And I really try not to change it. Make a mark and then don't fuss around by blending it too much. That is, that's the power we have over, with our pastels. They're so versatile. So, okay, I'm gonna move the camera once more backwards. I'm sorry you have to look at me so close. But thank you, all of you here. I'm gonna turn off this really bright light. Thank you all so much for being here with me in my studio. It has been such a blessing to look forward to doing this with all of you. This community is so important to me, and I appreciate everything that you comment on, you ask questions, you send emails. You're so encouraging. I love to see your artwork. I love how supportive you are of each other. This is an unprecedented time where we all have to really lean on each other and just be positive. Try to find the beauty of each day as we are in it, one day at a time, sometimes one moment at a time. I'm thinking about all of you. Of course, if I could come and give each of you an individual lesson, I wish I could. That would be so much fun. But thank you all. I know some of you, it's very, very late for you in the middle of the night. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. This will archive later for viewing. I'll post both of the paintings. Thank you to Susan Hodge for allowing us to use this beautiful, beautiful reference photo. If any of you paint this, please, 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 if you share it, please give credit to Susan for her amazing photography. It's really important as when we're using another reference image that we don't take credit for that reference image, because it was her vision in the first place to be able to compose that image. And then she allowed us to paint it. So make sure you guys give Susan credit. And I hope you all have a blessed day. Please paint this and then show us, share it with everybody, and please keep the faith and just keep going. Everybody's gonna get through this. We are all in it together. Thank you guys so, so much. Bye.